Hi, I'm Keegan. Welcome back to GM Talks, and I am joined by Scott Kuban.
Hi, glad to be here.
Yeah, welcome. So I'm back on my bullshit about politics and games, and so Scott has been
Right.
kind enough to join us. So let's just start with a simple one, right? What was an example of politics kind of creeping up in your games, either in character or real world politics, kind of seeping in that you really kind of liked, really enjoyed, that you thought helped enhance the session and the campaign?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I'll go way back in the day. I used to run a Vampire the Masquerade parlor LARP. Through no like real machinations of our own, just the players kind of choosing their own like political alignments. It turned out we were playing a sort of a hybrid of that Vampire the Masquerade and Vampire the Requiem, um, set in the Dark Ages actually. But so anyway, through no machinations of the ST staff, the PCs ended up choosing uh, both two different covenants, and it was almost exclusively those two. In fact, there's only one player who wasn't of either of the Circle of the Crone or the Invictus covenant. So it was very fun. We held a little party in play between the two covenants, just sort of a mwahaha. We have we really run the gamut on this here city, kind of self-congratulatory one. And of course, it being a LARP, we didn't want to exclude our one player who was from a different covenant. So there was a little bit of behind the scenes background politics, where the prince, who was of no public covenant, um, basically gave him a position, to essentially they couldn't not invite him if he had this position. So it was a kind of a little behind the scenes maneuvering between this one player and the prince, who had his own reasons for spoiling the party in this manner. So it was just a very fun little way of like marrying the behind the scenes realities of things and what was happening in play, to kind of just throw a little bit of a fly in the ointment of an in play party that was happening, and it led to some very fun scenes and very fun role play of people just being like ever so offended, but not wanting to counteract the will of the prince, of course.
Very nice. That actually, what popped in my head actually, because you mentioned the two Requiem covenants, is I'm like, that sounds like the intro to what was his name? This is years ago. Spoonie's thing about how he ruined a Vampire the Requiem LARP, and I'm like, oh my god, are we gonna surprise get the opposite side of that
Oh
story
no,
like just
no,
out
no!
of nowhere?
To my knowledge, Spoonie was not a player at my LARP.
But okay, no, that makes sense. So how did they kind of react to that further on? How did that change like the interplay of their politics, right, in that LARP? Because now you've got this kind of free agent running around, so to speak, right, that could tip the balance of power in some
Yeah,
way.
it definitely put him in kind of a power position in the middle of things. Because, of course, just because these two covenants had an alliance and they had kind of cornered the city, doesn't mean that they didn't have their own internal machinations between themselves, both like within the covenants themselves and between the two covenants. So yeah, it was a for a good month or so, he was the only one who was outside of that power situation, and it enabled him and us as storyteller staff to work with him to throw dirt in people's faces and step on people's toes, and make it so that this nice little alliance between the two covenants didn't get boring.
Makes sense. And then I'm guessing there's some cool down stuff after LARP sessions,
Oh,
things like that. Just
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
everybody in that group especially was very very good about the in and the out of play. We'd usually go to a Denny's or an IHOP afterwards to just talk about everything and get everything. And if there ever was any bad blood, we would cool it down and just bring it back to the out of play. We're all friends here level.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And so that's a good kind of jumping off point. How do you think you've leveraged politics in like maybe your tabletop games, since politics tends to happen a little more organically in any sort of LARP, just because you have so many people involved. but when you have a group of just 5, 6 people, right? How do you inject kind of politics, and how do you think your own real world politics might affect how you approach that in your games?
Well, as far as my personal politics goes, I'm a Molotov throwing lefty. I don't trust power.
You're in the
um,
right place.
uh, yeah, I don't trust power in many people's hands, and so I will usually find some way to critique power, be it the power of money, the power of religion, the power of state monopoly on violence. Um, in some way, I'll find some way to slip that in. If only as a if we're playing, say, like a super evil vampire game where everyone's crusty old elders, just to sort of like revel in it as yet another evil that we are masquerading and taking on for the purposes of catharsis. Yeah, I usually find a way to put that, because it's lost it a bit, but I do love the World of Darkness with its gothic punk aesthetic of, this is all ostensibly a critique of power and hierarchy. So yeah, I will always try to find a way to get that in there, just so I can, feel better about myself and the crumbling world we live in.
That makes sense. I mean, like my current werewolf game is very much a how I've always run werewolf and how I view werewolf. Right? Is it's an
Hmm.
existential horror dressed up as a power fantasy,
Yes,
and
yes,
that's where a lot
absolutely.
of people bounce off of it, or they don't get past that initial layer. Because a big theme of werewolf, right, is you can't do it alone. That is why there are
Yeah.
kinfolk and things like that in the older editions. Anyone who listens to this podcast knows I am not a big fan of the current edition.
Oh, I'm right there with you. Right there with you. It's a I like to call it as a milquetoast liberal nightmare.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh I
no, sorry, not milquetoast neoliberal nightmare.
oh yeah. I think my exact words when I talked to James Sembrano about the book
Hmm.
is it's neoliberal. It's radical language appropriated by a neoliberal aims.
Absolutely, I
But
absolutely agree. I mean, it hurts me. It hurts me. I really wanted it to be good, but it wasn't.
oh, I was hoping
Um,
like
but old school werewolf, there's so much to play around with, because they don't take this kind of like radical centrist neoliberal position on things. Like they do say that, like, yeah, you have to work together. It can't be all violence. It can't be all power. It has to be, but the tragedy of it all of werewolf is that, it's been all violence all the time, all anger all the time, and we killed all the people who moderated us so many
yeah.
years ago, and the ones that are left won't talk to us anymore.
There's part of that. I think also it is because werewolf is interesting in that it goes, hey, we did all violence all the time. That was bad. That kind of really fucked the world.
Hmm.
But violence is still
Yeah.
sometimes necessary, and I think that's where it walks a line that a lot of people forget. Like that the
Oh
violence,
yeah, it's
the excess of violence, is bad.
yeah, yeah. It's still a card in the deck. I also love about werewolf, and it's definitely kind of a yardstick. Is that it's one of the things I actually did like about New Werewolf is the different interpretations of pack structure that they
Hmm.
introduced. I thought that was pretty cool.
Okay,
Although that might have been like
that
one
was
of the
vampire.
latter. That
Vampire had pack rules in it. There were no pack rules in Werewolf Fifth, to my recollection.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. No,
That
you
was
know
my
what I was
biggest
thinking
complaint
of?
about Werewolf Fifth because I'm like the one game that could use some real good pack rules because that was a clever
Yeah.
thing in V5.
I wasn't thinking about Werewolf Fifth Edition that did that. I was thinking about the uh, Laws of the Wild, the Werewolf LARP rules, introduced different pack styles. So yeah, no, I can't even give it credit there. But what I was originally saying was that in older, up till then, pack structures was, this sort of dominance hierarchy first, you know, werewolf society, guru society, is not a democracy in any sense of the world. And it's always interesting. That was always an interesting like yardstick thing of like getting players to get into werewolf, is getting past sort of that human mentality of democracy is the way things happen. Not so in the Gayer Nation, not so in the pack.
Yeah, and the game is very good. So the game is good and bad, right? In that
Yeah.
It leaves options open to challenge that power structure as it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes some writers, I think, didn't challenge that sort of
Yes.
concept uncritically, and so some people, especially in some sidebars, I had a talk with Matthew Dawkins. I think sidebars are important in tabletop books,
Mm-hmm.
but they lodge shit in people's brains that could be contradicted in the same book later, and they do not
Absolutely.
care. It was in the sidebar. That is
Yeah.
the canon now.
Yep. Absolutely. But yeah, so it's an interesting way of looking at politics from sort of the fundamental political structure of things. But like I said, I really liked the Laws of the Wild update that had like non-authoritarian, non-hierarchy based pack structures,
Yeah.
which I really wish that Werewolf Fifth Edition would have picked up on and learned
Right.
from, and explored.
Like I believe some of those pack structures did end up in the book changing ways. However,
Ah,
Paradox put a bunch of transphobic nonsense horseshit in that book. And
honestly, I
people
stopped
and
paying attention.
people always push back on me for that one. Like, no, that
Hmm.
was an Onyx Path book. I'm like, Jason Carl admits that they fucking did it on a stream years ago when
Hmm.
they were trying to tamp down on some of the V5 controversy about the Nazi stuff. Like, they did
Yeah.
it. They so like
Yep.
no, like all the Onyx Path authors are like, hey, what the fuck is this? Like publicly about their own book, but
Yeah.
uh,
I probably give Paradox White Wolf too much credit. I still really like Vampire Fifth Edition mostly. There is, of course, like you mentioned, some of the Nazi stuff and some of the other stuff that gets
it's the
in passed
transphobia
along.
that
Yeah,
that keeps bleeding in. There's so much of it.
yeah. I can't. Yeah, I can't carry water for it, but I still do
No.
like Vampire
No,
Fifth. So,
I will admit that I liked Vampire 5th edition books, especially I like the core set. I liked
hmm
all the way up to probably I'd even say I kind of like the Sabat book. I wish there was more, but there were parts of the Sabat book I still really liked and thought it was kind of interesting. I
yeah,
think,
really interesting stuff there.
and then after that, I felt there was a sharp drop in quality. And I've kind of been off buying new stuff ever since from
Yeah,
there.
yeah. As far as I didn't really like the Camarilla and Anarch books. I thought
Okay,
they didn't mesh well with me, especially the Anarch book, because it
sure.
didn't give me anything to like chew on. There weren't any mechanics in there. There wasn't any like hard like there wasn't a lot of substance to it, in my opinion.
Sure.
There was interesting topics that were covered, but as a
Mm-hmm.
game book, it didn't do very well for me. Um, I think they've been hit or miss. Like there's been good books, there's been bad books.
Sure, sure.
But I definitely do like sort of I like the political message of Vampire. It is still, in my opinion, a pretty good critique of power. Uh, I hazard to say that I like the Anarch versus Camarilla setup of V5 more than the Sabbat,
I
because
I agree with that.
it it allows you to challenge the fascism of the Camarilla and the authoritarianism of the Camarilla from a perspective that isn't 30 Days of Night, splatterpunk.
Yeah,
There's if that has its own bag of tricks.
sure.
Beefing up the Anarchs really lets you point the finger and accuse
Oh yeah.
at the cam
And
from a lot firmer ground.
that was really the focus of V5 to some degree because
Hmm.
they admitted I was at the Grand Masquerade in 2016. They said they really wanted to recapture some of the first edition stuff about it being personal horror, more Anarchs versus Camarilla because the Sabbat was kind of a side thing at the time.
Hmm.
Like Camarilla versus Sabat really didn't hit until second edition, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, trust me, I love the Sabbat. Sabbat's a fun game to play. In various incarnations, but in terms of the political allegory, the Anarchs versus Camarilla has more teeth.
Yes. No, and Sabat versus the other two is more about transhumanism, which has its own
Yeah.
politics. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
some fucking weird transhumanists out there in
Hmm.
our world.
I will run and play a Sabbat game any day. But from a classical perspective, I think that
Actually, in
the
terms of
people.
power, I
Yeah.
have it right here. Actually, is
Oh, okay.
you might not be able to see it, but this is Exalted Third
Uh,
Edition,
oh,
and
Exalted Third Edition.
I've been reading through it, and I really like that one because the game, it's definitely more read between the lines because it is meant to be a fantasy game, right?
Hmm.
is but Exalted Third Edition is a lot about power, right? It's
Yeah.
the there's a part of it that's like, hey, the true kings have come back and things like that. That is a problematic trope in fantasy, but it also goes, but they're still cursed, and the
Yep.
curse isn't really what caused this. The curse just made them took like their heroic things and made them more. And because they were so powerful, no one could really stop them when it happened.
Yeah, I have. I trust me. I love Exalted. I've played and run in many multiple year campaigns of Exalted. Um, my issue with third edition. One of my issues with third edition, is just the extreme glut of charms,
That's
and
fair.
it makes it makes my analysis paralysis so bad. Which is why I really like Exalted Essence.
That's fair.
I think that you can play around in the third edition like enhanced setting without like, oh my god, what? I'm
I
not a
get
fan
that.
of how many
So,
charms I have to deal with
like,
in third edition.
I will admit that my life is a monkey paw because like I hold up my hand and it's just like, hey,
Mm,
I would really like to continue loving my rules like games, and it's like, all right, that's the general rule, but your favorite game is Exalted. Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, and then Exalted Essence came out, and
yeah,
that
it's
I've enjoyed
still,
it.
oh yeah, it's still like compared to some of the majority of other games I played, is still
Mm,
mechanically
yeah,
dense. But yeah, no, it's
it's good.
my issue with OSR, right? Because my desire for simplistic, fun,
Mhm.
down and gritty games really bumps up against the oh no, this book was made by a piece of shit.
Yeah, there's that too. There's that too. But yeah, like in terms of exalted politics, I think I played in a game that really kind of exemplified that. It was like deeply homebrewed, like future setting, not futuristic, but future of like the setting of Exalted,
Okay.
where like the players were dragon blooded, and they had discovered me in an manse somewhere, and I was the last solar.
Oh.
So that was very, it's like something had happened. All the solars and lunars and the sidereals were gone, and I they found me like the a solar that was like in a stasis tube somewhere, and a lot of that politics of like divine right versus the curse and all of that, and we got deep into the politics of like what's the politics of the primordials,
Huh. That
um
now
like
that's
like
interesting.
because it was kind of because what had happened was that essentially like Gaia and Autocathon won,
Okay.
and they teamed up and won, and just screwed over all of the other Yozis and other things and just locked them away very efficiently. And my character, who was a Zenith, who was thinking of this from like the Unconquered Sun perspective, was like, this is when you start to think like them, this is about the dominance of essence, the dominance of my flavor of essence. And the essence of the moon, the essence of the sun, the essence of the stars is too loud for my essence to compete with. So they have to go away. And like it was a trip to think like, because my character was very faithful to the Unconquered Sun, believed in the message of virtue, and that that ultimately the king's the boss and the king said I was in charge.
I do like that, and I do like using Exalted actually, especially D&D actually to some degree as well of challenging the trope of divine right. I
Mm-hmm.
think Exalted is a great one for it. I think
Oh, it's a
D&D it's a little
fantastic
more
one.
subtle, but mostly in that good is in D&D, at least the older editions, defined by basically good gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the good gods are doing something that you view as objectionable, you are evil by the decree of something that has more power than you.
Yeah, I think Exalted, by being more blatant about it, is able to tackle it better.
Sure, no doubt about that. Like D&D is a vessel for it, and I've played with it with D&D, but Exalted is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely the better vessel for that. And I always just I love stunting. I love everything
Oh yeah.
about it, and there's like you get your like weeb trash opinions out on in the group, and
Yeah, yeah. You definitely get to fight your various anime styles, which is very
right.
fun.
Oh yeah. Uh, no, are there any other kind of games that you can think of that really exemplify tackling different aspects of politics? And do you think, as a general rule, there's exceptions to it all the time, right? But as a general rule, do you think games that are more explicit or less explicit about their politics do a better job of allowing you to tell those kinds of political stories or explore sort of political themes?
I think I don't know if I can think of specific games. But I think probably when you want to deal with politics, like real world, like non metaphorical, non allegorical politics, you have to go to sci-fi, because sci-fi is the mirror held up to our own world in a very direct way. I'm a huge fan of Trinity Continuum. That's my favorite game line in all of its incarnations. And I like playing real world politics in that, both either projected a little bit into the future with Aberrant or a little bit even more into the future with Aeon, because it's much closer to the real world and what we are. And that's where you get to like talk about actual real world political theory and whatnot, because it's very materialistic and you're not having to deal with sort of like the supernatural influence, which as much as I love it, if you're really wanting to talk about politics, I think the supernatural muddies the waters.
So I'm not sure I agree. I think it's a yes and no. I think Worlds of
Mm-hmm.
Darkness, some of the books absolutely do that. Like, actually, Ronald Reagan was a ghoul of, Prince such and such, or something like that. It's something very silly, right? But I actually
Yeah.
I think World of Darkness is at its best when the supernatural part echoes the real world politics. And so, like, the Civil War happens. No vampire was in direct control of it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
now vampire society has to react to it, and because they are, even though they are monsters, they're still human in some capacity, and so the reactions are
Mm-hmm.
going to be very human, and that it echoes through. I think Werewolf handles it better in that, you know, every real thing has a spirit, and so that reverberates through the umbra in a way. So as you see like the rise of fascism in America and things like that, you have America the Beautiful, the spirit, who is even a pack patron to some packs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Becoming more worm tainted, more vitriolic, that ideal disappearing, and you're able to play with it on a supernatural front, but it's an echo or a consequence of what's actually the real world cause.
Yeah, that's certainly absolutely viable, and I agree with you. Yeah, World of Darkness handle, because it is an allegory of our world, similar to science fiction stuff, that's based on Earth and certainly scientific science fiction can get way away from Earth, like Dune and whatnot. But yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Like World of Darkness can definitely deal with that very well. I just, in my opinion, or at least I guess in my preference, like when I'm dealing with like the Expanse role playing game, I had a chance to play that, and I love the Expanse, the books and the shows as well, and that is just really good at examining politics by taking it a little bit into the future and letting things play out, without having, like I said, without having the supernatural there to kind of like excuse or explain things. It puts the fault squarely on the shoulders of humans, just like it is in the real world.
Totally fair. I Once I wrap up this werewolf, I might take a step back from World of Darkness for a while anyway, because I keep predicting the future, and
Yeah.
I'm too what's the word, positive, because in my game's timeline it happens after now, but it happens in the game before now.
Yeah, yeah. That's
and,
that's yep.
and I'm just like,
I
this kind of sucks.
I shot myself in the foot when I ran a game of Aberrant, and I described that Team Tomorrow and Project Utopia has essentially bought out Trump Tower uh, after his failure of a political career.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before 2020, so shot
Oh, yep.
myself out in the foot. I can't. And it's like, damn it.
Oh, so I saved myself a little bit. I had the World of Darkness equivalent of Kamala
Mm-hmm.
Harris win, but
Mm.
to show unity and that we are united, front, they took the competent Trump because it's the World of Darkness and
Oh
it's supposed to be a little worse, right?
no.
She goes,
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in my administration to show Republicans I still care about them. And after we'd finished recording, one of my players just like slams his fist on the table, going, "God damn shit libs! Of course, you
Mm-hmm.
hire him," and things like that. But no, I did things like I put in a thing where America is going to start like getting into a pissing contest and then go to war with China, and then like 3 months after it was in my notes, it still hadn't showed up in my games, but I did record it for my players. I'm like, I gotta spoil it for you, but here it's like
Mm.
Elon Musk is in a war room with Pete Hegseth talking about their China war plans, and like, oh no.
Oh man, if you really want to like genuinely horrify yourself and your players, there is a scenario for the game Cult, called "And the Rocket's Red Glare,"
Oh
which is set in 2016, where you are like staffers at the Trump campaign, and the sacrifice has to be made to secure the victory. Um, yeah, it's real depressing.
no.
Was who did an actual play of it? Um, Somebody did an actual play of it. That was really well done.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, horrified, just horrified listening
Yeah,
to
I
it.
always,
Yes.
especially with actual plays, right? I always
Mhm.
feel I gotta toe that line where I'm not using the news and specifically other people's suffering as like, fodder for
Oh yeah, yeah,
content, which is either all like imaginary for the most part. But that is interesting. Like that, I think as a private game,
yeah,
that would be a real interesting and fun kind of cathartic and exploration of that.
yeah. You're absolutely right. Like in actual play, you definitely don't want to make light of people suffering, but at the same time, I will use it as an opportunity to call a Nazi a Nazi.
Oh, for sure. Like,
And I'll give you the opportunity to punch evil, and it be very very realistic, to like historical and current day evil. But you're absolutely right about not using it as people suffering as a something to make light of or anything like that. But
yeah.
I will shout it out. I will call evil what it is.
Oh yeah. I'm
Algorithm numbers be damned.
Yeah, for sure. Mine is that I try and make it very explicit that if anything real world is happening in my game and it comes up, nothing
Mhm.
supernatural started it. That was all
Right, right.
people. The supernatural aspects makes it worse. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how I toe the line, right? This
yeah.
happened, people started it, people did it, and then the supernatural made it even worse than it is now. As hard as that is to
Hmm.
imagine. Um,
Yeah, and I always like to just add the caveat of, and you can do something about it.
yes. Um, exactly. There's no like a big thing, right? And I think, and I've talked about this with others. I think Old Werewolf was more biting, especially the revised
Yeah.
edition. I think revised is probably my favorite edition in terms of biting writing and how it
Hmm.
was. But there was always this sense of like hopelessness, mostly because it was the '90s and early 2000s, right? And it
Yeah.
was the end of history sort of thing, and that.
Oh, I could go on about that.
Oh, sure, sure. Big air quotes for those who
Hmm.
who can't see me. But
Yep.
so that was baked into a lot of the setting, and like people just don't want hopelessness anymore. And
Hmm.
I can understand why Werewolf Fifth absolutely tried to walk away from that, and 20th did in places too. Their Book of the
Hmm.
Worm absolutely made it like, hey, this is how you can stop this. Here's some ideas of actually making things better. And I think the opening comic did it best. Of where like, what if the Garu fight will win, kind of thing. I thought
Hmm.
that's very needed because I do think that kind of hopeless aspect of RP or like hopeless story RPGs are starting to fall out of favor in the market in general, just because there is this impending doom sort of feeling. It's why
Yeah.
even Call of Cthulhu has gotten less nihilistic as a game line.
Wow.
A lot of it is like,
That's the
hey, you stop this existential evil, it'll still come back, but it mattered today.
yeah.
It's yeah,
Yeah, I definitely get that, especially like when fifth edition Vampire was coming out. That was a big conversation about, do we need a World of Darkness in this? And like I still think we might not need it, but it can be, it can be done in the right way,
yeah,
such that you can balance that tragedy and hopelessness with some positive action. I really, and there was, I forget where it was, but it was some section, I think, of a vampire book that talked about how, um, because of the curse of Cain and how you will inevitably ruin everything that you touch. The more you try and cling to like the aspects of humanity, like some vampire would like willingly associate with like Nazis and skinheads and evil people for the purpose of degrading them and cursing them and bringing them down with them.
yeah. No,
And
and
like
oh,
that's
go
one
ahead.
way to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of looking at it. I think the World of Darkness, no, something like it, I do think. And I think, so this is kind of an issue, right? Because World of Darkness does age, I think, faster than other tabletops of its
Hmm.
era. And I think part of that, though, is because of its niche that is important, in that it was satire of the
Hmm.
politics of the day. And now, because you got this market thing really focused, like having a market share thing, not just being lightning in a bottle like the older editions was, V5, which is still, like I said, V5 Core is still a good game and I still enjoy playing it,
I agree.
is just to not like be known as the World of Darkness fifth hater. I am not. I would like it just to be better. Is
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you.
is that those satirical elements are done poorly in the current World of Darkness 5th. Like, there's an Elon Musk joke or something like that, but, like, in the older books, if you have the context, like, some of those jokes hit hard and they have teeth. They don't
Hmm.
have the teeth now because most of the people reading them now don't remember that, or even the people who were there and do remember it, they're not in the zeitgeist anymore, and so the joke is kind of stale and you're left with mostly edge. But I think the satire was an important part, and it's a weird like balancing act, right? You've got to balance the fact that comedy ages faster than any other kind of
Hmm.
genre while still needing that because the social satire is an important element, I'd argue, in the gothic punk sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I look at it, and I kind of look at every role playing game like this, is where there are imperfections or places where older editions did certain things better. Um, that's my job. That's my job to use my experience and use my knowledge of how things used to be to marry the two in a way that elevates the game at my table. And ultimately that's the thing that I'm going to remember is the game that I made out of this, as opposed to this sort of frozen in amber how it is in the book.
Oh, for sure.
If there's something stupid or dumb or offensive or trite or hollow in any book that I read, I'm just gonna throw it out there and either take something that was older and better and put it in there, or just come up with something new. So I like to like just take the best of whatever book that I can, and use my skills and my knowledge to make it a better experience for the people at my table or the
Oh,
people
for
watching
sure.
my actual play.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I agree with that. I think my thing is, I guess what I'm trying to say is because the book, if you're new to a game, is there to try and
Hmm.
teach you both through the language and tone, right? And if there's a
Right.
little bit of that biting satire, I think that finds a better way to bleed into the games. And because I grew up like in the '90s, early 2000s, right? I pick up on those jokes not as well because I didn't read the books when they came out. I was entirely too young, right?
Yeah.
But like there was one joke that was pretty close to the edge, but probably would have found its way in a werewolf book if they still do the satire, where they went
Yeah.
to a Pentex owned Herculean firearm depot in Texas. And the guy's like, yeah, buddy, this one shoots like a 50 cal, but bucks like nothing. It's so easy a child could shoot it. In fact, if you've watched the news, you'll know. A child already has. And my whole table was like, holy shit. And I was like,
yep.
And it's like, yep, but that sounds like something that would have been in an old werewolf book. And it doesn't punch down. It definitely punches at the firearms, but it makes you uncomfortable too because, because
it's real.
Because it's real. It's this country, right? So I think putting more of that in, but that's once again the whole neoliberal thing of Werewolf Fifth.
Yeah.
So
Werewolf Fifth couldn't go anywhere near that. I have not picked up another werewolf book after. Like, I just can't.
Oh, sure.
I just can't.
No, I completely understand. I read the fifth edition core book, and I'm like, this isn't for me. I don't like this.
Not at all.
And because of what it did to the previous writing team and all of that came out, it's like there would have to be some major institutional changes at Paradox / New White Wolf now for me to get back on board.
I still want to see Mage 5th edition, but I'm scared.
You and like basically everyone I know.
Yeah, like if it could be like if it could be vampire, like a vampire level of not what it was, but still still recognizable as opposed to werewolf, I could tolerate it because I could elevate it at my table.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing. That's my worry is because I think Mage was, at least at the time, like compared to all the other game lines, was the most politically nuanced of the World of Darkness games.
Yeah. I mean, when you're dealing with something like the Technocracy, it doesn't get more real than that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm scared, but I still want to see it. I don't think I tried to like think about like, okay, how do I take Werewolf 5th edition and restuff that turkey with all the old good stuff, and I couldn't think of a good way to do it.
I created house rules, like extensive house rules for the internet proper, because I ran it at Gen Con when it came out. I ran the same session 3 times, I think. 3 or 4 times. Super beefed up characters, and I had to do some fucking work. Like, the only thing from Werewolf 5th I really liked was, and I kind of stole and put back into my 20th game, is the Umbra is fickle. It will change based on the emotions of not just the people, but the animals in the region, because they're just as important.
Yeah, there were some very cool ideas in there. Like, in general, I like the dice mechanics of it because I really like Hunger Dice and the Desperation Dice from Hunter. I really like that sort of like refinement, changing power from a it was a gas tank in old editions. It was, but making it something more volatile and ever present. And I think the dice, the rage dice worked pretty well.
I did not like them, but I
you didn't?
I did not. I didn't because I thought the replacing dice was bad, because being constantly full of rage is a misunderstanding of the original themes of Werewolf. Rage is a double-edged sword. It is meant to be channeled, right? And so because it replaces dice, it's a state of being. Anger is a state of being which can be destructive, but when it's channeled, when you channel it right, rage and anger can be absolutely destructive to the cause you're trying to do, but it can also help. But you have to channel it. And so just being in a state of anger, I think, misses the theme of Werewolf. And so I created a whole thing where the Werewolf rage dice actually worked more like the Desperation dice from Hunter. You choose to channel them. And then I actually did a house rule also where the double ones becoming like a bestial failure or a critical success, basically based on what kind of action it was, changed slightly based on your auspice. So if you were channeling rage as a thurge to spirit stuff, those actually counted as critical successes, but you'd still fail in other ways, etc., etc.
Sure.
and that way the auspice meant something other than just your gifts.
Fair enough.
But yeah,
That actually sounds pretty interesting. I like the sound of that.
yeah. So that was kind of a whole thing. I have something up about it, and if you ever want to look at it, I can send it your way.
You
But
know what? Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Might make me actually want to run Werewolf.
no, but yeah, that's the whole thing. And then yeah, I've been bouncing around a lot of games recently and looking at them and just kind of being interested in what's going on because there's so much in the tabletop space specifically because it's such a queer space, but it's also such a white cis het male space at the same time. You end up in these really weird fucking places. Like a good example is Goodman Games. And overall, I've really liked Goodman Games. Their Dungeon Crawl Classics, I think, is a great game. They have a biting satire game called X Crawl Classics where you're in the American Empire with Emperor Ronald Reagan III or something like that. They all worship the Roman gods, and they
I'm very familiar with X. I'm very familiar with X Crawl because the guys who the guys who wrote the first edition of it. And I'm not sure if they're the same guys or not. Were the guys who ran my local gaming shop when I was growing up.
That's fucking cool.
Like, yeah, like I literally bought my first like gaming books from those people, and they were the ones that wrote the first edition of it. So yeah, I know all about X Crawl. It's fun.
I believe they were involved in the Dungeon Crawl Classics
Awesome.
printing of it. But no, I really like that. But also at the same time, they've been doing the reviving old D&D adventures for 5th edition, which is fine. But they did one recently for the Judges Guild. And they cut all ties, and they made a big show of cutting all ties with the Judges Guild a few years ago because the son of the founder, who now owns the company, is a Holocaust-denying neo-Nazi.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's pretty awful. And so
That's still bad.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. And so they cut all ties with him, and then they just went, "Hey, our new one is this," and everyone's like, "Hey, man." Given all your progressive art stuff and you like intentionally putting in black characters on your artwork and things like that, and you changing the opening to going, hey, you should diversify your reading habits and read fantasy authors from all walks of life as your Appendix N. What the fuck is this? And they're like, hey, we really like this old adventure, and what we're doing is we got in the contract that we're actually going to just pay back directly the people who got screwed over by the Pathfinder Kickstarter that the Judges Guild never did, and then make sure that they don't see a penny more. And I'm
Nice.
like, and it's like, hey, I get that, but also like you could have just not done that adventure too. I get the impetus on some degree, but also like you're still promoting something that will eventually people might look at the original, and if they buy the original because there's PDFs of it and all that, it goes back to the pocket of a neo-Nazi Holocaust denier. So, like, I think you fucked with your platform there a little bit.
It's hard. It's very hard. Like you said, there's this mix of like games being inclusive and an escape and an exploration for all sorts of queer, non-white, diverse identities. But it does have this history. It has this history of being primarily guys who look like me. And that being kind of the end all be all of it. And so, yeah, it's rough to try and like bridge that gap and try and be like stay true to what's good about the old, while still like embracing all of the newness and the diversity of it all. I mean, I know which way I come down on that distinction.
Sure.
I think my friend said it best when he said that the tradition was peer pressure from dead people. And nostalgia is like one of the greatest curses that we've ever levied upon ourselves. I'm more than likely to enjoy something new and more expansive than something tied to the old. But nostalgia is that curse. It is that terrible, terrible curse.
What is it? I can't remember where I heard it, but it was a nostalgia is heroin for old people.
Yes.
Now I do like some of the old stuff, even old Gary stuff. But the reason I do and it's why you have to actually like read with a discerning eye, right?
Hmm.
Is those older games, a lot of them were written before the conventions of the genre crystallized. And
Hmm.
so you see different takes that can be implemented with new school thought and
Yep.
new, more diverse ideas to break away from those genre conventions that kind of had a stranglehold in specific genres of tabletop as well.
Yeah, I think I cut myself luckily. Like, I cut my teeth on World of Darkness. I didn't really play Dungeons and Dragons until the fifth edition, just because it never really meshed with me. So the nostalgia I have is for trench coats and katanas,
Yeah,
not so much, all the old Dungeons and Dragon days. So I might consider myself lucky because I can very easily divest myself of
sure.
that era of things without much of a problem for myself. But I absolutely understand people who are rolling since the days of the red box. I get it.
No, for sure. And I'm not that far back. I taught myself tabletop on 3.5 D&D. So, the easiest game to pick up and play
Yeah.
is so I definitely have more of a nostalgia for that game specifically.
Hmm.
That's why I have the books, even though I never plan on running a 3.5 game ever again, just to kind of like look at and have fond memories, sort of thing. But no, I just find the rule conventions of the older games interesting while being horrified by some of the things that are said that are flavor text of those books.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, do you have any? I know we're getting close to time. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts on utilizing politics, your real world politics, etc., etc.? And
Yeah. Yeah. No problem. I think that if you're going to deal with real world politics, you really have to calibrate it to your table slash audience. If it's a private game and you're going to be dealing with political things, got to make sure you're on the same page with all your players. Um, uh, and kind of not so much spoil things, but let people know that these kind of issues are going to be there. Definitely get like consent information, so that you don't tread on things that people really don't want to deal with. Um, but subtlety is for cowards, is what I'm trying to say. Go hard, go hard on your politics. Really get into them up into the extent that it will genuinely upset your players. Because I think role playing is a fantastic tool for examination, for catharsis, and understanding things that you are not necessarily a part of your day-to-day existence, especially other people's perspectives and other people's thoughts, even if those thoughts and perspectives are absolutely abhorrent. Being able to step into them to some degree, play around with them, will give you a little bit of empathy for those who are like the self-inflicted victims of those ideologies, and also give you a better perspective on how to fight it.
all right, perfect. Hey, thanks, Scott. Really appreciate you joining.
Absolutely, it was a fun time.
Uh, is there any place online you want to be found, if you want to be found at all?
Sure, yeah. My actual play studio is Simulacra Studios. It's Simulacra TV on Twitch and YouTube. You can go there. That has all the archives of all my old, all my actual plays. And if you want to give me money, you can go to patreon.com/Simulacra Studios.
Wonderful.
Become a patron.
Perfect. I'm Keegan. This is A Bunch of Gamers. You can find us on YouTube, Podbean, other podcast places. You can find us on Facebook, Blue Sky, but you'll never find me on Twitter. I founded a cesspool, and I was proven right. All right. Thank you, everyone.